Guys, for coming back to another Mindset Matters. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so this month's Mindset Matters, we're going to be talking about personality and trading. So, for those of you who are watching live, what I did was for the members in our group, I first sent out a link to the 16 personality type test. They took that test, that gave them a 4-letter kind of like acronym of what their personality type was. I then had them take a survey that I made on Google Docs so that I was able to collect all the data of everybody's personality type. So before I actually get started in the presentation, I do want to share those results with you guys because they were actually really interesting. So let me go ahead and share those. So like I said, we got 8 responses back. So according to 16personalities.com, what is your personality type? Do you guys see that everybody is a different personality?
Wow.
All 8 people who, including me, because I filled out one of these, we're all different personality types. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought it was interesting because it kind of just proves my point in all of this that anybody of any background or any personality type can come to this market and be who they are and be successful, right? It doesn't matter if how you see the market, it doesn't matter how you approach it, it doesn't matter how you conduct yourself. We can all be in this environment, right?
Yep.
So one of the questions that I wrote, or one of the responses that I wanted you guys to answer was, when it comes to trading, my biggest strengths are, we had someone say flipping my account, knowing when to trade and when not to trade, holding and confidence, determined to succeed, analyzing higher time frames, and holding trades. Someone wrote too much drawdown. I didn't really maybe the question kind of got skewed, but I didn't really understand how that was a strength. Maybe that they're saying that when they're in drawdown, they're able to hold it. And then we had another person say patience, focus, attention, risk small, perseverance in trading, and then knowing when I need help and asking for assistance.
That's a big one.
So I love all of those responses, right? Because I think what makes successful traders successful is knowing what their strengths are at the same time while knowing what their weaknesses are, right? So that led me to ask, when it comes to trading, my biggest weaknesses are, someone said waiting for my setup, staying on top of the 4-hour time frame, checking charts too much, avoiding backtesting, entering my good trades, fear of missing out, fairly informed experiments, low discipline, and then not passing a prop firm challenge, right? And I think it's always important as a trader to, because you are the business, you are the one making these decisions, it's important to analyze yourself and evaluate yourself so that we know how we can improve moving forward, right? My next question that I asked was, true or false, I feel safe to speak my mind. My intention for this question was in the group, right? Like, I feel safe to speak my mind in the group, but I kind of like that it came out kind of vague because this can be applied to any circumstance, right? Because I guess based on your personality type, I know for mine, it was saying like I really don't. I avoid conflict. Like I don't like to argue. I don't like to kind of like bump heads with anybody. But I do feel safe to speak my mind, right? Especially even when it comes to mindset matters. Like I had no problem pitching this idea to Jaquan and saying, I think this would be a great addition to our group. Yeah, so we had 70, almost 88% of the people who responded say that they do feel safe to speak their mind, and I love that. And so for the person or people who don't feel safe to speak their mind, I want to say that just in terms of our trading community, right? This is a very, very safe space, and you should never feel like you have to know anything or that you have to prove yourself to anybody to speak up, even if it's asking for help or even if it's sharing your ideas, right? My second question, true or false, was When things do not go my way, I put in parentheses in life or in trading, it frustrates me. The reason why I added added this and I thought it would be a good addition was because I think there's this not I think there is this misconception that successful traders know what they're doing all the time, and by know what they are doing, I mean know what the market is going to do, right? So I think for especially newbies or people just coming in, it frustrates them that they're not able to predict what the market is going to do, but a disciplined trader knows that regardless of what the market does, I have to still show up, right? So we had 75% of people say that when things go their way, it frustrates them. And I thought, when things do not go their way, it frustrates them. And I thought that was really interesting, right? So, um, and that does, have to go back to a personality type. We also had 25% of people say it does not frustrate them, meaning that when things don't go their way, they're able to kind of, brush it off and keep rolling with the punches, right? And then my last question was true or false, I take pride in my abilities to get things done. And 100% of people said true. And I love that because that shows that even though sometimes we have FOMO, or even though sometimes we second guess ourselves, we still take pride in being able to either push the button or even just set up the analysis, right? So I love that. How did you guys feel while you were taking this survey, I guess, based on your personality type?
I feel the assessment was accurate because I've taken this type of assessment before, and I've come up with the same personality, and I liked it. It was very informative.
Mm-hmm.
Very good job.
Yeah, did you even see like at the very bottom it showed you who you had the same personality type as, whether it was like real people or characters? And Mr. Anthony, what were a couple of your takeaways? Because I know you shared them with me, but if you don't mind sharing them with the group, like what was something that stuck out to you that maybe you didn't know before about your personality type?
Well, I am a type person, and it just the assessment just proved what I already know. I feel to be. I'm coming from a person that's a school administrator and things like that. It's you have to be that kind of a person to manage 400 kids.
Yeah.
But I found it to be pretty accurate.
Yeah. So anybody else? Because I did ask you guys to kind of make a mental note of after you took the personality type, something that stuck out to you about the results. So does anybody want to share?
This is the one that gave us those four letters, right? Or 5 letters, right?
It was 4.
4 letters. Okay. Let me tell myself. I don't think I did this part. Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Let myself. I think I'm the one you were talking about. But this other part, cause I told you about it, right? Okay. So I know we had talked about it the other day. The test really opened my eyes because it was. I feel like it was opposite of who I am. Or maybe it's just me growing into the person that it said I was. It said I was an extrovert. And I'm like, no, I'm an introvert. Like I know deep down in my core, like I'm an introvert. You know, it said just my by my personality being more outgoing and things like that. I just thought that was really insightful because it also said I was a right brainer, and to me I'm a left brainer. I don't know if y'all know the difference, but like a left brainer is more methodical, analytical, organized. I think that's me. But it says I'm a right brainer. That's a person who's more curious, not as organized, like a musician or an artist. Creative. I guess I am creative on this side, right? Very creative, right, Mr. Anthony? Very creative. So maybe I could be a good mixture of both, but it opened my eyes to the other part where I didn't think I was a certain type, and it's like, no, dog, you this type. So I like that part about it.
Well, I think even when it comes to you, Shaquan, I could see how you would be more of a right brain person because to be an entrepreneur, I feel like you have to be more right brained.
Yeah.
Like to make something out of literally nothing.
Yeah.
Like you have to be creative, you have to be artistic, you have to see the potential in all of these things because there's no structure, there's no formula to any of this. So I can definitely see that.
Okay, now hype me up.
Right. Anybody else? Does anybody else want to share anything that they took away from the personality type test? Or even, if you guys had exposure to that before.
I thought it was good. It kind of confirmed something that I did back in a marriage couples personality test back 15 years ago or something like that. But, it's good because you don't see yourself the way you really are sometimes. So it's good. I like it.
Yeah. And I actually love that you brought that up because after I took my test, I had my husband take one too. And it really was very insightful because we had the same four letters except one. So I am a feeler and he's a thinker. And I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. So, and it really just helped me deep dive into the way he sees things. So it was definitely very insightful.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Please let me ask this question. Okay. So, because you just said something. Feeler, thinker. I don't know if you're about to hit on this. If you are, tell me to be quiet, please.
No,
Okay.
I am.
I'm going to be quiet. Thank you.
Okay. So, our outline for today, we're going to be talking about what exactly is a personality. We're going to be talking about the Myers-Briggs personality test that I had you all take. Any discoveries that you guys may have had, personalities in trading, understanding yourself, and how to optimize your strengths and weaknesses, right? So personality, what is it exactly? The definition of personality is the characteristic sets of behaviors, cognitions, and emotional patterns that are formed from biological and environmental factors which change over time. So I think this goes along with what you were saying, Shaquan, about how you may see yourself a certain way, but you're becoming a different person because your biology and your environment has been changing. So definitely like that observation. And I think it's just important to understand that a personality is not set in stone.
It can
Because we're
change.
kind of always being faced with not even obstacles, but just something is going on every single day, and especially when it comes to these markets, right? Every day, at least for myself, since I'm disciplined to being the best trader I can be, I am not stuck in my ways, right? Like I'm able to take myself out of my prior way of thinking and maybe see the market from how somebody else sees it, and that helps me kind of expand my brain, right? And I love that because it also shapes me as a person and my personality, right? So I found this quote. I was just looking for a quote about personalities, and I found style is a reflection of your attitude and your personality. So if we're talking about trading styles, right? That, like this is saying, is a reflection of your attitude. So how not only how you feel about yourself, but how you feel about the market and your personality, which is how you portray yourself to other people, right? Or how you broadcast yourself. And I think it's really important to know um, how special you are. Like, yeah, it sounds cliche, but we all bring something different to the table, especially when we're talking about just this group. And I think nobody has the edge that you have. So definitely use that as an asset and know that that's on your side, right?
Right.
So we're talking about how can we measure personality. We can measure personality by the Myers-Briggs personality test that I have you all take. It's the same exact test. The Myers-Briggs personality type indicator is a self-report inventory designed to identify a person's personality type, strengths, and preferences. The questionnaire was developed by Isabel Myers and her mother, Catherine Briggs, based on their work with Carl Jung's theory of personality types. Does anybody know who Carl Jung is?
Mm-mm.
I do.
I don't.
Mr. Hayden, what do you know?
Well, he was a student of Sigmund Freud, and he had quite a following and left a huge impact in the world of philosophy and psychology especially. Talked about a collective unconsciousness. It's a different. I used to subscribe to it, but now I don't. And it's not. I'm a Bible man, and it's not as biblically oriented as I am. But a very influential man. Has a lot of respect. I respect him.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. Is anybody else familiar with him, or has ever come across his name at all?
When in school and education, we studied him
Okay.
a long time ago.
Right. Nice. So I actually do. Let's see. I found a very, very informative video on him. Let me go ahead and pull that up because I think that kind of shaped the whole conversation that we're going to have about even where that personality test came from, right? And what does it really mean? Like, what are we really uncovering when we're talking about this? So let me go ahead and share that. And let me know if you guys can hear the video.
This video is sponsored by the book summary service, Blinkist. The first 100 people to use the link in the description will receive 1 free week of unlimited access and 25% off a full membership. We feel as though we are in the driver's seat of our mind, driving according to our conscious will. But upon only a little introspection, we realize, at least in many cases, we are merely following a built-in navigation system that exceeds our knowledge and understanding. We perceive but the display screen atop an entire complex software run on an even more complex hardware. If we do not attempt to familiarize ourselves with this navigation system, how it works, where it's trying to go, and how to override it when it sends us the wrong direction, we risk aimlessly traveling the world, ending up somewhere uninteresting at best and disastrous at worst. 20th century Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung is perhaps one of the greatest and most capable minds that has ever attempted to do this, to explore itself from the inside and conceptualize a complete understanding of this sort of internal navigation system from the top down. Jung was born in 1875 in Caswell, Switzerland, to a relatively impoverished rural pastor, Paul Jung, and a depressed, eccentric, spirit-seeing mother, Emily Jung. Jung was a very introverted and isolated child who spent much of his time alone, engaging in activities of make-believe, projection, disassociation, and he would work at a psychiatric hospital under the prominent and well-connected psychiatrist Eugene Bleuler. Several years later, he would leave the hospital and begin his own private practice. As Jung became more successful and well-known in his field, he would soon become acquainted with the extremely popular, groundbreaking, and controversial psychologist of the time, who still holds this title today, Sigmund Freud. The two would meet for the first time in 1907, upon which they would talk for around 13 hours straight. This would quickly develop into a strong friendship and professional association. They traveled the world and lectured together, analyzed each other's dreams, and discussed various aspects of their psychological studies and theories. However, Freud, being of a much greater professional stature at the time, as well as being substantially older than Jung, created a dynamic in the friendship that was much more like a father-son or teacher-pupil relationship. This would unfortunately pose problems as Jung's career advanced and began to encroach on Freud's. The two would soon find themselves in disagreements over fundamental aspects of each other's theories. Ultimately, these disagreements, Jung's tendency toward a somewhat mystical consideration of the human mind, as opposed to Freud's more scientific, reductionist approach, the nature of their father-son relationship, and Jung's desire for professional independence, all caused the two to split their friendship off in 1913. Following and as a consequence of this breakup, from around 1913 to 1918, Jung experienced a sort of midlife psychological breakdown. During this, he spent much of his time introspecting and writing about psychological experiments he conducted on himself, exploring into the recesses of his unconscious. This period of transition, independence, and psychological turbulence would ultimately concretize his views of the mind and his career as an independent theorist of psychology. Put simply, the primary objective of Jung's career was to understand the nature of the psyche and then develop theories and methods to aid in the integration of all its components so to create a singular, unified state of wholeness. In this context, the psyche here simply refers to the complete personality of the individual, including feelings, thoughts, and behaviors, the combination of the unconscious and conscious mind. The continuous striving toward integrating the psyche through a process of self-realization and becoming a maximized, authentic individual, for Jung, was the fundamental goal of life and psychological understanding. Man's task, he wrote, is to become conscious of the contents that press upward from the unconscious. As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. For Jung, there's a constant interplay between the unconscious and conscious realms of the psyche, which combine to create our complete personality. Most of this, however, develops and exists in the unconscious realm, beneath our immediate awareness and control. Thus, a significant portion of who we really are, what we really like and are capable of, and the reasons we do the things we do, persist within a realm we don't actively understand or have access to. And so, in order to come into a more authentic and complete state of being, the individual must attempt to make this portion of the psyche conscious by tapping into it and integrating it into the whole of their awareness. Jung would call this process individuation. In order to better understand this, it is important to understand Jung's model of the psyche, which he divided, starting with the broader dimensions, into consciousness, personal unconsciousness, and collective unconsciousness. Breaking each of these three realms down, consciousness is, as one would typically think of it, the realm of personal awareness, where one identifies explicitly and knowingly with themselves. At the core of this is another structure Jung identified, the ego. The ego sits at the center of consciousness and provides a sense of personal distinction, creating the story one tells themselves about themselves in order to maintain continuity in their identity. The ego is expressed in the conscious realm by what Jung called the persona, which is the outward efforts of appearance which the individual actively displays to the world. This persona, however, is often disjointed from the individual's true self, as it displays the character that one thinks or wants to be, according to what the ego deems is appropriate to a particular society and role, and not what is true to who the individual actually is.
Wow.
In order to execute and maintain this suitable appearance and self-esteem, the ego filters various components of personal experience and selfhood, either into or away from the conscious dimension. When it filters away and restricts, it represses and sends down into the unconscious realm. One of Jung's most unique and profound insights that differentiates him most notably from other psychologists is how, from here, he separated the unconscious into two distinct structures, the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. The personal unconscious fits similarly into the ideas already understood and proposed by Freud and others of the time, in which, after the ego represses and disregards undesirable aspects of experience and selfhood, these aspects are stored and concealed here, just beneath normal awareness. They still, however, continue to actively affect and interact back and forth with consciousness. The collective unconscious, however, differentiates from the personal unconscious and other prior conceptions of the psyche in that, according to Jung, it contains and facilitates universal elements that are inherited through the sum total of human history, similar in some sense to how biological evolution works. Man has developed consciousness slowly and laboriously in a process that took untold ages to reach the civilized state, and this evolution is far from complete, for large areas of the human mind are still shrouded in darkness, wrote Jung. As a result of each generation of human offspring essentially imitating the behaviors of the previous generation to at least some degree, an unbroken chain of psychological imitation is formed, going all the way back to the beginning of human history. Thus, a sort of reservoir of psychological predispositions, structures, and memories that have been formed by this chain is automatically inherited by each human being. Jung found this to be empirically demonstrable in both his own professional psychiatric practice, finding recurring similarities in the unconscious of a vast number of his patients, as well as his historical and mythological research, in which he noticed that similar motifs, symbols, and themes that appeared in his patients' unconscious also were prevalent and consistent across art, myths, and literature within different cultures of different times, even though these cultures often never even encountered one another. In Jung's view, these shared motifs, symbols, and themes were expressions of the various psychic structures consistent across humanity, which he called archetypes. These archetypes, in Jung's model of the psyche, essentially form the basis of the individual's personality by predisposing specific cognitive tendencies. Within the combined unconscious, Jung would refer to all the repressed, denied, and unknown content which the ego does not want to identify with as the shadow. Lastly, sort of nested within the shadow is what Jung broke down into the animus and anima, which specifically referred to the suppressed feminine qualities in a male, anima, and the suppressed masculine qualities in a female, animus. According to Jung, all the aforementioned structures of the psyche work together in active circulation to ultimately form what lies at the center, the self, the combined authentic totality of the unconscious and conscious. The self is who the individual actually is, what they actually desire, what they actually like, what they are actually capable of, and so on. Simply put, getting the ego and a high degree of the persona as close to this as possible is the goal of individuation and ultimately a fulfilled life.
An ad.
Whether it's through methods like therapy, introspection, personal development toward authenticity, or some combination, ultimately, for Jung, it is the task of the individual to determine and strive toward this. In all cases, this sort of self-realization requires an effort of radical self-acceptance, and radical self-acceptance requires an effort of radical self-honesty. In order to actively move deeper into the psyche, each opportunity one takes to examine a personal feeling, thought, or action, they must attempt to do so by accepting the complete and often undesirable potentiality of what it truly indicates about themselves, that they are not always who they think or hope they are. Each of these capitalized opportunities, personal or professional, is like a small step down the stairwell into the unconscious. As one goes further down, however, as they confront these deeper and darker elements of their being hidden in the basement, they must, in Jungian terms, work to integrate their shadow, the breadth of their potential faults and wickedness, as opposed to rushing back up the stairs in denial. One's shadow does not disappear by looking away from it. In the same way, one cannot literally evade the light-casted shadow of their body by outrunning it. There is no move or evasive tactic that separates the individual from their psychological shadow. The danger, rather, is in the attempt to do so, the ignorance and denial of it. Good does not become better by being exaggerated, but worse, and a small evil becomes a big one through being disregarded and repressed. The shadow is very much a part of human nature, and it is only at night that no shadows exist, wrote Jung. Awareness of one's dark side allows one to more appropriately manage and recognize it when it sneaks up the stairs uninvited. One must know of a problem to be able to fix it, and it is an act of healing to admit that one is sick. Although self-acceptance and authenticity is perhaps simple and obvious enough sounding, the act of actually working towards radical self-acceptance and individuation is, of course, far from simple and obvious. In the absolute sense, it is almost certainly impossible. In the above-average sense, it is still perhaps life's greatest and most difficult endeavor. To truly and honestly accept your downfalls, weaknesses, potential evils, and shameful or unpopular interests and qualities, to admit what you see, fear, or hate in others is and could be inside of you, to admit to yourself that you are not and will never be completely who you think and want to be, that you are not as good as you had hoped, and to confront what your mind has worked a lifetime to keep from itself, is a task that literally shakes the very core of the psyche. However, it is perhaps proportionally essential for a fulfilled and complete life. Ultimately, Jung's work provides insights, theories, and methods to help the individual move through this process toward not only potentially gaining access to fixing the bugs in their navigation system, but also, in some sense, access to the controls where now they can better input the destination coordinates according to where they actually can and want to go.
All right. So what do you guys think?
I took notes.
Let me hear what are a couple of your notes.
Okay. It's a few things. First, let me say this what I didn't write. Okay. So I would really like to go back and watch this video. If you could put this video in the chat, please. So few things that sat out to me was when he talked about like the feminine and the masculine traits, both within the opposite sex, right? Because I know we've had the conversation about femininity in trading and masculinity in trading as well. And I think that is something that does need to be looked into as well when we talk about trading and trading psychology, because those things do exist. But when he talked about the ego, that part as being a trader, um is who you want to be, is your desire. The ego is how you see yourself, is how it may not be real, but is how you see you. You ever heard people say fake it till you make it? That's what that made me think of. But you've not made it, but in your mind you have. Do y'all remember the show Living Single? Anyone remember that show, Living Single? Yeah, I could watch that show every day. I love that show. But what was her name? Regine was ego. She was fake it till you make it. And one day she finally made it, but she failed so many times because her ego was so high. She liked the rich man, even though she was the poor girl, right? She worked at the boutique. She would buy clothes that she could not afford. She wore hair that was not hers, but it was her ego. Her pride would not let her fall, right? But in trading, we go through the same thing. The people who want the one big payday, the people who say, I'm going to be a millionaire, I'm going to get this again. You will be. You will be. But how many accounts do you have to blow to get it, right? Market Wizards, I know I love that book. There are so many people who will bet everything on one trade and lose it all because their ego wouldn't let them go small. Because in their mind, they were better than where they were in reality. So when he talked about that, my mind was blown. Last thing, because I don't want to take over. Myers was studying himself. He studied himself. Do y'all actually I got two more things? Do y'all know how beautiful that is to sit and study you? To understand that when you make mistakes and when a problem arises, you're able to say, I failed. To say I failed, and that it goes back to ego, is such a humble thing. But a lot of people don't have humility, right? My uncle, he says this about me all the time. He says, I love how you're able to say you've made a mistake because it's a certain thing about you want to fix. I'm always thinking of ways to get better, to do better. I'm okay with saying that I'm not okay. I'm okay with saying I don't understand and I don't get it. Which goes back to the feeling and thinking part of what you were talking about, of what the test did. Goes back to right brain. I mean, everything that the test. This is really bringing it out. You know, and for him to think about, for him to really dig deep, into who he was. I think when we're trading, we have to dig deep into who we are, where we were, and where we are now. It's really a below the surface type of thing. And last thing, I'm not gonna take over. Last thing, because this was so powerful when he said something about there's some things that we're not going to be able to explain because it's another realm that we just don't know. Is so true and powerful. I really do believe that God shows us different realms within our lives, and we experience different realms within our lives, and it really is a part of spirituality, to dig deep within yourself. I've seen some things. I'm pretty sure some of you guys have seen things, and it things that we would never be, the human mind will never be able to explain. That's what I loved about this whole thing. It's like it's life coming together.
Yeah. And to go actually along with what you were just saying, I have a quote that I kind of came up with. So, we are researchers in the markets and computer programmers of ourselves. So we come to the markets with no control, right? Like
Yeah.
there's nothing we can do but press buy or sell, but to put our chart art, like that's all we can really do,
That's
right?
it.
But we can computer program, our hardware. So even when it comes to emotion, I really love that Mr. Elaine shared that article yesterday, And I thought it was really powerful because I understand why a lot of people have problems sitting on their hands and doing nothing.
Yep.
Is because while you're doing nothing, all of these different emotions, all of these different thoughts are racing through your mind. And it's kind of like, well, where and who do you give the power to in that circumstance, right? Because if you're sitting on your hands and you're intentional about sitting on your hands, you're doing
Yep.
something. Like Shaquan and Micaiah and we all got a call earlier this week, and we were talking about like how sometimes we just need to take a break from the market, and taking a break is doing something.
Yep.
Right, especially if you're intentional about it. I think the misunderstanding is when people don't know what they're doing. That's when they feel like they should be doing something, or like every suggestion they feel like, oh well, maybe that's the right way. But if you know what you're doing, even if it is taking a break, you're doing something.
Right.
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 So does anybody else have any more takeaways from the video? Because I actually have a couple more, but I want to see, if I can tag along with anybody.
I've got something I'd like to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I was encouraged by, I think it was the Myers-Briggs, not so much Jung, talking about the personality type can change over time.
Yeah.
Because I know personality is formed by a lot of your environment.
Yeah.
And so some of my biggest issues and hindrances in trading is words spoken over me as a child. And so as I'm healing those, I'm realizing that I step up with more confidence, and I've got a little prayer. I know you've got your affirmations, but every morning before I trade, I speak my little prayer. And anyway, I think it's really good for us to look at the words that were spoken over us from teachers and parents and relatives and friends, either well-meaning or not so well-meaning, and heal those. Mm-hmm. I think it's very important to heal the past.
Yeah, I love that. And kind of to piggyback off of that, so something that I wrote down was a quote from the video was, one must know of a problem in order to fix it, and it is an act of healing to acknowledge and fix it, right? So kind of going along with what you were saying, Mr. Hayden, whether you were spoken those, kind, uplifting words or kind of derogatory terms, those do have, especially as a child where you're very impressionable, those do have an effect on your personality and / or psyche, right? Yes. And that affects how you internalize yourself as well as see the world, right? And how you may have come across to other people. Yeah. So I love that. And something else that I wrote down while we were watching the video was I thought about that story that Shaquan always tells when she explains to people how she got introduced to trading, and she said that her mentor said that the market is a mirror, right? Yeah. I think that is true in the sense of personality, because how you approach to this market is how you see yourself, if that makes sense. Yeah. If you don't have confidence in your setup, there might also be similarities in your personality in the same sense. You might doubt yourself on a lot of different other, other things. Charles, call Dorothy. So actually my next slide kind of goes along with that. But before that, call Dorothy. So the Myers-Briggs personality type usually utilizes these 4 different categories, right? So these are the 16 different, possibilities, right? So your first 2, you're either an extrovert or an introvert. Extroverts, as we know, are very energized by people. They enjoy a variety of tasks, a quick pace, and are good at multitasking. Introverts often like working alone or in small groups, prefer a more deliberate pace, and like to focus on one task at a time. Intuitives prefer to focus on possibilities and the big picture, easily see patterns, value innovation, and seek creative solutions to problems. Sensors are realistic people who like to focus on the facts and details. They apply common sense and past experiences to find practical solutions to problems. You can either be a thinker or a feeler. A thinker is somebody who tends to make their decisions using logical analysis, objectively weigh pros and cons, and value honesty, consistency, and fairness. Feelers tend to be sensitive and cooperative and decide based on their own personal values and how others will be affected by their actions. Judgers versus perceivers. Judgers tend to be organized and prepared, like to make and stick to plans, and are comfortable following multiples. Perceivers prefer to keep their options open, like to be able to act spontaneously, and like to be flexible with making plans, right? So the different, like I said, that's where that 16 personalities come from, because
Yeah.
if you were, math, like if you were to add all of these different what's the word, possibilities
Yep.
up, right, it would be 16 different personality types. Did that answer your question, Shaquan, about the thinkers versus feelers?
I, I was gonna ask a question based on it,
Go
but
ahead.
can we pause here for a quick second?
Mhm.
Y'all, let me tell y'all something. We can't go too fast with this conversation. Let me tell you why. I need y'all to really start to think right now, because what you just bought out is gold, right? Mindset matters. Let me ask y'all a question, and I need everybody here to answer this, or most if you feel comfortable answering this. How many of you guys have had childhood trauma? Because Mr. Hayden shared something and we skipped by it. That's a childhood trauma. How many of you have had one? Please type one, or just say yes, or type yes. Because I've had one. I've had multiple childhood traumas, and we're about to talk right now. This is about to get deep. I don't share this a lot, but I'm going to share it with you guys because it's very personal. As a child, someone took my innocence twice. Two different people, two different age groups. One when I was between the age of 6 to 10, another between the age of 12 to 14. Okay, I'm not gonna cry, but that happened to me. Now, let me say this. The reason why this is important that I'm sharing this is because it made me an indecisive person in real life, and I still struggle with it. And the reason why I struggle with it is because someone took my two different people took my decision away to say no. Okay. So when I come to you guys and I say I missed an opportunity, or man, I don't know why I didn't take it, or man, I feel like I'm chasing this bad trade, or whatever the case may be, it's because I still struggle with my childhood trauma. Okay. Now, some of us are trading that. I'm trading it. And I've been in the market for 6 years. But you know what I've had longer? The trauma. So when people come to this market saying, oh, I want to be a consistently profitable trader, Mr. Hayden just said something so powerful. He said, you need to heal. You got to heal to grow. And that is so true. In this market, you have to heal to grow. I will forever be on the side of taking breaks. Because sometimes when those thoughts arise, sometimes when that feeling of I'm not in control arises, I got to take a break. Because there are sometimes when you can't see the market because of childhood trauma. When someone tells you, oh, or your mind, or you say, I'm not good enough, or you don't feel good enough, or you don't feel like you're going to make it, that fear of success, that fear of failure, that fear of pushing the button comes from somewhere. It comes from somewhere. Not only that, you're trading someone else's problems. That wasn't my problem, what they did to me, but they made it a problem for me in my life. They had their own sins they struggled with, and they brought them onto me. So I have to heal from those sins. And then whatever sins I caused someone else, or how I've abused myself, whatever came out of that, I got to heal from that too. You see where I want y'all to feel where I'm going. Am I making sense? I want to know I'm not alone here with what I'm saying. Okay. When you come into trading and you're learning from certain people, understand you could be trading their problems too. That's why we talk about it so much. Everything you're sitting here talking about, Sydney, I used to think I was an introvert. Why? Because I closed myself off from the real world from what happened to me. My sisters used to always say, "You're boring. You're never gonna do this in life and do that and go out and be around." They're right. I don't like being around large people. I don't like teaching big groups. I don't, because I like feeling comfortable on the inside. Okay. Extroverts, I question why are people extroverts and why they do what they do. The intuitives and the sensors, the thinkers, the feelers. I trade with emotion. I think every trade through. I'm very analytical when I think about a trade. Before I press that button, I got a feeling. I know people sitting say, "Oh, you can't have emotions. I'm a female. I am a woman. You're going to tell me not to feel? I am a woman. That is my femininity. That is my feminine side coming out on the chart." Now, a man can be a little bit different. I've taught many men. And if I can tell you, I can show you guys text messages, emails, DMs right now of me saying, "Hey, man, do this." And they'll go do it. The men are more thinkers in this game. The women, we feel. More women, I think, stay on demo longer than men do. Ask me how I know. Because I talk to more women too. Because there's a feeling and a fear. There's a separation of this especially if they're married. This is not my money. This is our money. The money goes more towards the man, right? Sydney, you and I are stay-at-home moms. Micaiah, you're a stay-at-home mom. I feel like I trade my husband's money. It's my money, right? It's my money I put into the market. But because he's more of the provider in W-2 sense, right? So these are things we think, we all have to start to think about too, Then we go from the judges and the perceivers. Sydney, everything that you're talking about, and even that video showed, it carries on from childhood. And then we change, how he talked about personalities change, they change over time. And now I can see, oh, okay, I'm coming out of my shell more, because my circumstances have changed. My, going from 4 figures to 5 figures to 6 figures has changed. And, all these things have changed. And I own you guys own businesses too. Now y'all are portfolio managers. All these things have changed. And that's where I was going to go to as well. Like, how many of you guys feel like you trade as a thinker? How many of you feel like you trade as a feeler? And still going back to what holds you back from being successful. And have you guys grown? Like, do you see where your personality has grown from before you started trading to now? How have you grown? So I told you I was going to get deep a little bit. I was going to share, and I never would have thought to share that with you guys. But that's a part of this, Sydney. And I think we need to start getting deeper with this. We got to. Y'all really want to talk? Because I like to talk. I like to talk about this type of stuff. Because even in the video, the more you see your mistakes and even other people's mistakes, you grow from those things. And we only heal when we can be transparent about them. That's why therapists have the best job. People will always need a therapist. I won't say they have the best job. Let me not say that. I used to want to be a psychologist, so let me not say that. That was a major of mine. I dropped it quick.
No, yeah, that's actually, one of my goals. Whenever I do want to get my PhD, and I do want to be a therapist. Like, I love talking to people, and I love hearing what other people have to say. I love hearing other people's experiences and even like their traumas, because that really does shape them. And that's something that I learned based on my personality type, is not only is that a good career choice for me, but also I'm able to be very empathetic. Like, it's very easy for me to put myself in somebody else's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love that. And I guess, because Shaquan, you did bring up a good point, like